There are celebrity children who are born into fame. There are others who spend their childhood trying to stay away from it. And then there are those who eventually realize that the spotlight was never something they needed to chase. It was already waiting for them. That is the fascinating story of Andres Muhlach. Born into one of the Philippines' most recognizable entertainment families, Andres grew up surrounded by movie stars, television cameras, beauty queens, and the enormous legacy of his father, legendary actor Aga Muhlach. His mother, Charlene Gonzales, was herself a beauty queen, actress, model, and television personality. His twin sister, Atasha Muhlach, would eventually enter show business too. So technically, Andres didn't have to introduce himself to the entertainment industry. The entertainment industry already knew his family. But here's the twist. Andres didn't rush into fame. He studied, he traveled, he experienced life away from the cameras. And when he finally decided to become an actor, he had something much more difficult to prove than simply being talented. He had to prove that he wasn't famous only because of his surname. He had to become Andres Muhlach. And that is where the story gets interesting. Early life. Antonio Andres Bonin Muhlach, professionally known as Andres Muhlach, was born on November 5, 2001, in Makati, Metro Manila, Philippines. He was born into a family where show business was practically part of the family vocabulary. His father was already one of Philippine cinema's biggest stars. His mother had represented the Philippines internationally as a beauty queen and had built her own entertainment career. And Andres wasn't born alone. He arrived with his twin sister, Atasha Muhlach. Being a twin already gave Andres a unique childhood experience. But being the son of Aga Muhlach and Charlene Gonzales made that childhood even more unusual. People were naturally curious about the children of two famous personalities. Would Andres become an actor? Would Atasha enter entertainment? Would they follow their parents' footsteps? For years, however, the answer wasn't immediately obvious. His parents wanted their children to experience something that fame can easily take away. A normal childhood. Growing up in the Muhlach family. Although Andres was surrounded by celebrity culture, his parents tried to keep him grounded. He and Atasha spent part of their childhood in Batangas, away from the constant intensity of Manila's entertainment scene. That environment allowed the twins to enjoy a relatively ordinary upbringing. They could spend time outdoors, enjoy family life, and grow up without every moment being turned into a public spectacle. One particularly revealing detail about Andres' upbringing is that he did not receive his own cell phone until around grade 9. In today's world, where children can have smartphones before they can even properly spell their names, that says a lot about the parenting style of Aga and Charlene. The message was simple: childhood first, fame later. And perhaps that decision helped Andres develop an identity outside his father's enormous shadow. His father, Aga Muhlach. To understand Andres' story, you have to understand the man whose surname he carries. Aga Muhlach is one of the Philippines' most celebrated actors and leading men. For decades, Aga dominated Philippine cinema, becoming known for his charisma, romantic roles, dramatic performances, and enormous popularity with Filipino audiences. Andres grew up watching his father work. But there was an interesting difference between how the public viewed Aga and how Andres viewed him. To millions of Filipinos, Aga was a movie star. To Andres, he was simply dad. That distinction became important when Andres eventually entered show business. He wasn't entering a completely unfamiliar world. He had been around it his entire life. But he also knew exactly how difficult his father's career had been. And that meant Andres understood one thing very early. Having a famous father can open the door, but it cannot guarantee that audiences will stay to watch you. His mother, Charlene Gonzales. Andres' mother is equally accomplished. Charlene Gonzales won Binibining Pilipinas Universe in 1994, representing the Philippines internationally. She later became an actress, model, host, and television personality. So Andres inherited entertainment experience from both sides of his family. But Charlene's role in Andres' life went far beyond being a celebrity mother. She and Aga emphasized education, discipline, and independence. When Andres eventually began working professionally, His parents didn't simply tell him what to do. Instead, they encouraged him to trust himself. Andres has said that his parents told him to trust himself, be confident, and believe in himself. Interestingly, he also explained that he doesn't constantly ask them for advice. They allow him to figure things out himself and step in when he makes mistakes. That's an important detail, because instead of creating a son who depends on his famous parents, Aga and Charlene appear to have raised someone who was expected to make his own decisions. His twin sister, Atasha Muhlach, Andres' closest childhood companion, may be the person who was literally born beside him. His twin sister is Atasha Muhlach. The two grew up together, studied abroad, and eventually entered the entertainment industry around the same period. Atasha pursued her own interests in business and entertainment, while Andres focused more heavily on acting. Their relationship is particularly interesting because both entered show business with the same enormous family name behind them. But they weren't simply trying to recreate their parents' careers. They were building their own identities. Andres became associated with acting and modeling. Atasha developed her own path as a host, singer, model, and entertainment personality. Together, they represent the newest generation of the Muhlach family. His older half-brother, Andres, also has an older half-brother, Luigi, Iggy Boy, Muhlach, from Aga Muhlach's previous relationship with actress Janice de Belen. This means Andres grew up as part of a blended entertainment family with connections spanning several generations of Philippine show business. The Muhlach family name therefore isn't just recognizable because of Aga. It is part of a much larger entertainment history. And now Andres is becoming one of the people responsible for carrying that history forward. Education. One of the most important things about Andres' upbringing was education. His parents did not want him to abandon school simply because he came from a famous family. He attended Brent International School, where he also became involved in basketball. Later, he pursued further studies in Spain, attending St. Louis University Madrid campus. That experience gave him something very different from the environment of Philippine show business. He had to learn how to live more independently. He studied away from his parents. He experienced life in another country. He also learned practical responsibilities that came with being away from home. Andres has spoken about his time abroad and the independence it gave him. The experience mattered because when he eventually entered show business, he wasn't simply a teenager thrown into the spotlight. He was a young adult who had already experienced life outside his family's fame. Did Andres always want to become an actor? Not necessarily, and that's one of the most interesting parts of his story. When you are the son of Aga Muhlach, people might assume that acting was automatically your dream. But Andres did not immediately jump into entertainment. He took his time, he studied, he considered his options, and eventually, he realized that acting was something he genuinely wanted to pursue. He has said that since he was young, he dreamed of seeing himself on the silver screen and on stage. That dream eventually became reality. But there was another challenge waiting. Could he succeed without hiding behind his parents? His first experience in front of the camera. Andres wasn't completely new to cameras. When he was very young, he appeared in family-centered commercials alongside his parents and twin sister. These early appearances gave him some exposure to the world of advertising and entertainment. But professional acting was different. A commercial appearance lasts seconds. A television series demands weeks or months of preparation. A dramatic role demands emotional vulnerability. And theater requires something even more difficult: performing live, with nowhere to hide. Andres would eventually experience all three. Entering show business. In 2024, Andres officially launched his professional showbiz career. He signed with Viva and began working on television projects. His first major television project was Da Per's Family, a family sitcom that was particularly meaningful because he appeared alongside his parents and twin sister. It was almost like the Muhlach family introducing the newest generation to the public. But there was a difference. This time, Andres wasn't simply the child of a celebrity. He was becoming an entertainer himself. And then came the project that changed everything. Ang Mutya Ng Section E. In late 2024 and early 2025, Andres landed the role that would transform his career. He was cast as Mark Kiefer Watson, commonly known as Kiefer, in the hit Filipino teen series Ang Mutia Ing Section E. The series premiered on Viva 1 on January 3, 2025 and was adapted from the popular Wattpad books by Lara Flores. Andres starred opposite Ashtin Alvaga and Raven Angeles. And suddenly, something changed. The public wasn't just interested in him because he was Aga Muhlach's son. Young viewers were becoming fans of Kiefer. They were watching Andres. They were discussing his character. They were following his chemistry with Ashtin Alvaga. And they were discovering a new generation of Filipino stars. The series became a major success, with its popularity extending beyond the Philippines and attracting international attention. For Andres, this was the breakthrough he needed. The Kiefer effect. Playing Kiefer was not simply about looking good on camera. Andres had to work on his acting, his delivery, and his Filipino language skills. Because he had spent significant time studying abroad, he had to put extra effort into speaking Tagalog naturally for the series. He revealed that he studied Tagalog every day, including at home and with his family. That detail shows how seriously he took the opportunity. He could have relied on his family name. Instead, he worked. He could have assumed that his looks would be enough. Instead, he prepared. He could have treated acting like an inherited privilege. Instead, he treated it like a profession. And that attitude may ultimately become one of the most important parts of his career. The pressure of being Aga Muhlach's son. Of course, the comparisons were inevitable. His father was once a major heartthrob. Now Andres was being promoted as a new generation leading man. The similarities were obvious. The looks, the charm, the screen presence, the surname. But Andres has also acknowledged the pressure of living up to the legacy. The challenge becomes, how do you honor a legend without becoming a copy of him? Andres seems determined to find his own answer. When he worked on Ang Mutia Ing Section E, it was his first major project without his parents and sister. That experience forced him to stand on his own. He had to learn. He had to make mistakes. He had to solve problems. And he had to prove himself. His parents' advice was simple. Trust yourself. Be confident. Believe in yourself. His first major award, Andres' rapid rise was soon recognized. In 2025, he won Best New Male TV Personality at the 38th PMPC Star Awards for Television. For a young actor who had only recently begun his professional career, the award represented a major milestone. But perhaps more importantly, it signaled that the industry was beginning to recognize Andres as an individual performer. The famous surname might get people curious. But awards are earned by performance. Film career, MINAMAHAL. Andres also expanded beyond television. He starred opposite Ashtin Alvaga in Ninamaho, 100 Bilaklak Para Kay Luna. The project gave the pair another opportunity to develop their on-screen chemistry outside Ang Mutia Ing Section E. This was important for Andres because it showed that his career wasn't going to be limited to one television character. He was beginning to explore film. And there was still another challenge ahead. Theater. BAGETS the musical. Perhaps one of the most emotional chapters in Andres' young career came when he was cast as Adi in Bagets the musical. Why emotional? Because his father, Aga Muhlach, famously played Adi in the original 1984 film. Think about the symbolism. Aga played Adi when he was a young actor. Decades later, his son walked onto a stage and played the very same character. That's more than a coincidence. It's a father-to-son handoff. A passing of the torch. Andres admitted that there was pressure to live up to what his father had done, but he also described the opportunity as an honor. The musical became Andres' major theater debut and required him to act, sing, and dance. That was a completely different challenge from television. On television, mistakes can be edited. On stage, the audience sees everything. Andres had to prepare through rehearsals and workshops before taking on the role. Bagets the musical ran at the Newport Performing Arts Theatre in Pasay from January to March 2026. For Andres, it was a full-circle moment. His father had made his mark as Adi. Now the son was making his own memories in the same role. His personality behind the cameras. Despite the glamorous surname, Andres has often presented himself as relatively grounded. He has talked about learning independence while studying abroad. He has also spoken about the importance of his family. And when it comes to acting, he appears to understand that talent alone isn't enough. In an interview with Pep, he described acting as demanding work that requires preparation both before and during filming. That mindset may prove important as he moves forward. Because celebrity can create attention. But only discipline can create longevity. Relationships and love life. Now we come to the part fans are always curious about. Who is Andres Muhlach dating? The answer requires separating reality from fandom. Andres has developed significant on-screen chemistry with actress Ashtin Alvaga, particularly through Ang Mutia Ng Section E and their other projects. That chemistry has naturally generated fan interest. The pair have become one of the young entertainment industry's popular screen partnerships. But on-screen chemistry doesn't automatically mean a real-life romance. As of 2026, there is no confirmed public marriage or long-term relationship that Andres has announced. His career currently appears to be receiving much of his attention, and that may not be surprising. He is still at the beginning of what could become a very long career. Is Andres Muhlach married? No. As of 2026, Andres Muhlach is not publicly married. At 24, he is still establishing himself professionally. Marriage appears to be far from the center of his public career at the moment. And considering how quickly his professional life has developed, perhaps the timing is perfect. He has television, he has film, he has theater, he has awards, and now he has an audience watching his every move. Love can wait. The career is moving. Does Andres Muhlach have children? No, Andres Muhlach does not have children as of 2026. His family story currently centers around his parents, his twin sister Atasha, his older half-brother, and the growing next generation of the Muhlach family. Of course, life changes. But for now, Andres' story is much more about building his own name than building his own family. The Muhlach name and the next generation. The Muhlach surname carries enormous weight in Philippine entertainment. Aga Muhlach established himself as one of the country's most recognizable stars. Charlene Gonzales built her own legacy as a beauty queen and entertainer. And now their children are entering the industry. But Andres doesn't appear interested in simply inheriting the past. He wants to build something new. That's why his transition from Daper's family to Ang Mutia Ng Section E, film, and then theater is so significant. Each project challenges him differently. Each one forces him to develop. And every new role moves him another step away from simply being Aga Muhlach's son. His legacy, still being written. It's too early to say exactly what Andres Muhlach's final legacy will be. He's only in the early stages of his career. But the foundation is already impressive. He was born into a legendary entertainment family. He grew up with a twin sister who also entered show business. He received an international education. He spent time away from the Philippine spotlight. He chose to enter entertainment when he was ready. He made his professional debut in 2024. He became a leading man through Ang Mutia Ng Section E. He received an early industry award. He expanded into film. He stepped onto the theater stage. And then he played the same iconic role his father had played decades earlier. That's an extraordinary beginning. The biggest question, but perhaps the most important question isn't, can Andres Muhlach become as famous as Aga Muhlach? That's the wrong question. The better question is, can Andres Muhlach become famous for something that belongs entirely to him? And the answer is beginning to look like yes. His father gave him a legendary surname. His mother gave him another powerful connection to entertainment. His family gave him guidance. But the performances, those belong to Andres. The mistakes belong to Andres. The growth belongs to Andres. The success belongs to Andres. And eventually, the legacy will belong to Andres too. Andres Muhlach's story is fascinating because it combines privilege, pressure, family, ambition, and identity. He could have entered show business simply because his parents were famous. Instead, he took time to study. He experienced life abroad. He learned independence. And when he finally stepped into entertainment, he did so knowing that the comparisons with his father would be unavoidable. But instead of running from the Muhlach legacy, he appears to be embracing it while slowly creating his own version of it. From Keeper in Ang Mutya Ing Section E to Adi in Bagets the Musical, Andres is beginning to show versatility across television, film, and theater. And perhaps the most beautiful part of his story is that he isn't trying to erase his father's legacy. He's extending it. Aga Muhlach once captivated Filipino audiences as the charming young star of Bagets. Now his son is standing under the same spotlight. But Andres isn't there simply to repeat history. He's there to write the next chapter. And if his early career is any indication, the Muhlach name may remain part of Philippine entertainment for another generation. Because sometimes, a legacy isn't about following in someone's footsteps. Sometimes, it's about taking those footsteps and walking somewhere completely new.